we are ready to dine. Our food and wine columnist Shiva Reddy is back with us here in studio, and today she's going to tell us how to make the perfect pizza dough. Shiva, hello there.
Hello, Gloria.
So you know it's a good pizza when you see empty plates, no crust left over. So where do we even begin when we look at what makes a good pizza dough?
Yeah, I think we start from the start. Where does it even come from? Naples, Italy. And so you have an item that was made for people who couldn't necessarily afford to have a kitchen. The actual spaces themselves in Naples were very small, very shared, and sometimes just wouldn't have that space in general. So you needed something quick, cheap, on the go, and pizza was it. And then there was a very large immigration from Naples across to North America. Now we have so many different styles of pizza. Now, I would love to look at the top 3 big styles that we often see, the Neapolitan. Now, with this one, it has the fewest ingredients. It needs the highest heat. It will have a thin layer of crispiness from the center all the way out to the crust, and it cooks within 90 seconds. We also have the more modern style, which is a New York style. Now, this one is not necessarily cooked at that high of a heat, a little bit cooler. The dough is stretched out, but it's still a little bit thicker. And when you pick it up, the inside, or like the center rather, will fold gently, but it will never crack. And so you have that. That one takes a little bit longer to cook, and it'll be a little bit more golden brown. And we also have the Sicilian style. This is kind of like the party one. It's very forgiving. It is basically a dough that can be made within that day. And then you can have thick layers of actual toppings as well as crust and sauce.
Oh, you're making me hungry just thinking about the perfect pizza. And there's so many different tastes. Everybody likes something a little different. Now, what's a key ingredient then that will allow for the differentiation between the different types of dough?
Flour. We begin with flour. It is so, so important here, and everybody is very, very particular about what kind of flour they use. So I got to speak with AJ from Brooklyn Pizza. AJ's Brooklyn Pizza. Now, he's from Brooklyn, born and raised, and his establishment essentially emulates Brooklyn. It's warm, cozy, in your face, and just so delicious. And here he tells me about one of the best flours, the 00, but he doesn't actually use it himself for a good reason.
Like the beautiful Neapolitan-style pizza places that we have here and that are all over the world, they use a very specific flour, which is 00, which is beautiful. And when I say beautiful, it's so silky, it's amazing. It would never work in our place with the style of pizza that we want. It's just like the high gluten allows you to fold it, gives you the crunch, allows you to put multiple toppings on, and it not be floppy.
And so because it's not sloppy, here he gets to kind of work a little bit more with all-purpose flour. It has a lot more of a wider range, and it will give you bubbles, but not necessarily those gigantic bubbles that you see in a Neapolitan. And then there's also bread flour as well. This will be denser, sweeter, and again, a bit more distributed bubbles as well. And then a lot of bakers actually use a combination of the all-purpose and the bread flour together too.
Well, how important is the yeast that you use?
It's the thing that we always forget. I feel like we have it in the back of our cupboard, and it's like, okay, great, I could use that. But I got to speak with another great pie maker and pizza maker at that too, Stephanie French. She and her sister own the pie shop here in Vancouver, and they were telling me about how it's very important to use yeast that's still alive.
And making sure your yeast is active. So if you've got sort of that old yeast that's sitting in the back of your cupboard or has been in your fridge for years, like just chuck it. It's not going to work, and it's going to be really sad if you put all that effort and then it dies, or it's dead. That makes sense. Like even dry yeast can go dead. It has a shelf life. So just, I recommend people go to the shops and just buy a fresh packet, or you can go to Bosa and buy like fresh yeast, or you can go down to Florist and get like a little bit of sourdough.
Now, Stephanie herself uses local flour. She also brought up some really interesting environmental factors that I did not consider. So you have things like water, for example. She recommended that as opposed to using fresh tap water right out of the tap, let it sit down in a jug overnight. That way the actual chlorine will dissipate a little bit and it won't attack the yeast itself. So preventing all of that good magic from happening. She also said to consider the environmental factors of where you're located. For them, they're located at a little bit more of an elevation. They're located right by the water. And so she really takes into account, is it winter? Is it drier? Is it more of like the wet Vancouver that we know where they have to add in a little bit more. And so here she says you should be able to tweak your recipes, and it's not always going to be one standard recipe.
I had never thought about humidity being a factor there. I know whether you're making meringues or that type of thing, if it's going to stiffen up or not, depending on how much humidity there is in the air. But so when you're making pizza dough, how much time does it actually take?
Yeah, so it does take time. Like we were talking about the Sicilian one, that one could be quick and easy the day of. But with the pie shop, they actually hired a brewer that they were working with before he got on with his brewery.
A brewer?
A brewer.
Okay.
The yeast master, just to understand how the fermentation process works, how to get the most flavor. So they went from going from a day of fermentation to 2 days, so allowing it to rise. Here you also have AJ's, which takes 3 days in total. A cool rise, allowing for those flavors to build. And then coming up next, we're going to be talking about Via Tavere, and they actually take about 1 day.
1 day.
One day.
I'm the person that goes in and buys the dough already made, so I don't have to think about that, I guess. But okay, you talked about different temperatures, different styles. How does the oven affect the pizza dough?
Yeah, as I mentioned, Via Tavere. So Dom Mora of Via Tavere, one of the brothers who owns it, he was telling me about how important it is to have the right oven and the temperatures and what it does. Now, it is important to note that Dom and his brother of Via Tavere are actually one of the first people to own the proper Neapolitan stove and oven that came from Naples. And now they get to be kind of the authorities of ovens. So have a listen to this.
Yeah, so again, the Neapolitan dough, it cooks at a higher heat, so it gets the char and it's a little softer. When you're dealing with the New York dough, you're dealing with a longer cook time, still at a pretty high heat, but a longer cook time. So you get a firmer dough, a little bit more of a crunch to it. As far as the dough goes, I mean, the recipes are very similar, but yeah, I would say it's a lower heat, and the texture is different in the pizza, a little crunchier, a little crispier.
Oh, and a little bit of that burniness around the edge too when it bubbles up.
I love it.
I love it. But you said 90 seconds, 70 seconds?
Yeah, with Neapolitan, you have a wood fire oven around, I would say, 450, realistically like 900 Fahrenheit.
Yeah.
That's 90 seconds, very quick. New York style, you have 12 to 15 minutes at a lower, cooler temp.
I'm Neapolitan all the way.
Same here.
Simple margarita, and those first few bites are kind of the closest thing to heaven that I can imagine. I love it. So we heard from 3 different professionals there today, Shiva. What kind of advice would you have for someone who's making it at home? And I'm sure we've got a lot of local, it was the sourdough boom, and I know a lot of people have also specialized in their own pizza dough. What would be your advice? Yeah,
so everybody had the same thing to say, even though they come from such different backgrounds. It was take your time, be gentle with the dough, give the dough time to ferment and rise as well so it can keep up that flavor. And with your toppings, little is less. Little is more, rather. You can do so much in terms of flavor if you just have the simplest things on top.
Right. We're not going into deep dish territory here, are we?
I mean, Sicilian, you can kind of mess with that a little bit. But what I loved about Stephanie's story was that her family would treat pizza nights as like the fridge clearing days.
Oh, again, my favorite Neapolitan margarita. So just the fior di latte, little circles of nice soft cheese and a couple of little basil leaves and that beautiful pomodoro. The pomodoro tomato sauce is just the key. Got to be the right tomatoiness and the right saltiness. What's your favorite topping?
Oh, I want it simple. I want the same. I want a margarita, or I'm a sucker for cheese. And then actually the pie shop, even though I wouldn't mess with, pineapples that often on my pizza because they're too moist.
Yeah.
I love caramelized pineapples on top.
Oh.
And they use capicola too, so I'll mess with that. And you know what? I'm a sucker for dips every once in a while. So some dips for my crust, why not?
You're just bring it all on.
Let's do it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gloria.
That's Shiva Reddy. She's our guide to the world of food and wine. She joins us every Monday around this time when we want to hear your pizza tips as well. Maybe favorite toppings, maybe something a little unconventional. Feel free to weigh in on the coast at cbc.ca or send us a text, 236-330-2623. Again, 236-330-2623. Now, Shiva Reddy is a sommelier at the Michelin-starred restaurant Burdock & Co. She has a new docu-series coming out next month. It's called Not Your Butter Chicken, and we'll be talking to Shiva about that in the coming weeks as well. In the meantime, if you'd like to follow her on Instagram, it's Reddy91. It's Reddy, Reddy 91.